Hi, I'm Maria Thea Harris-Silvello on social media. Welcome back to Sew Over 50 podcast on Sew Organised Style. Grab a cuppa and relax with us.
Sew Organised Style podcast acknowledges traditional owners of country throughout Australia. We pay our respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures and to the elders past, present and emerging.
Welcome back to part 2 of Sarah, the spreadsheet and website developer of the Curvy Pattern database. So what I'm referring to here on Instagram is the hashtag Sewingcpd or the Instagram account Curvy Pattern Database or the website curvydatabase.com that Sarah talked about in part 1 of her podcast. Let's get back to part 2 of her discussion about the Curvy Pattern database. So the 50 intersects with all communities.
And so I keep a list. So, this past month, there was 41 patterns that I recorded as having been released. And I already had 35 of them that I had recorded on my phone throughout the month. I still go back through every single designer and make sure I didn't miss one. But generally, creeping through Instagram, I can keep up with a lot of it.
And again, that's a lot of work, but it's work that gets over 1,000 views every month.
Yeah, and it's work, but it's in little tiny snippets when you're just writing down a pattern name and usually misspelling it because you're writing it on your phone. And
yeah,
it's not a big deal most of the time. Sitting down and doing a roundup when it's time to do a roundup takes me a solid 10 to 15 hours, depending on the month. And I usually either do it over a weekend or over 2 or 3 weeknights after work. But otherwise, I do have the luxury of a website where I can absolutely neglect it in the middle of the month, right? So if it's not roundup time, I'm just like, I have a website? Oh yeah, I have a website.
True.
Google will email me and be like, hey, your website got this many hits this month or this day or whatever. And I'll just be like, oh, I forgot about that. It's thankfully very low maintenance. And I really don't have any goals to ever be someone who pushes daily or weekly blog posts. That's a level of work that I'm not prepared for, which similar to you, like you do a lot of work here because you are doing weekly podcasts and it's just, I appreciate that, but it's not something I ever see myself managing.
You're doing it in a really sensible way and you are putting a significant amount of time into it. Doing an end of the month roundup, I think that's probably a good amount of information for people who are looking for curvy patterns to then be able to spend, however long they need to find a pattern that, maybe they've been looking out for, or maybe something that inspires them.
Mm-hmm.
So you're keeping people's sewing motivation going every month in a really positive way.
Yeah, without being overwhelming. Yeah, which is something I also really like too.
That's right.
Even there's been months where I was just like, I'm not keeping track this month. Like, I'm not going to. When it's time for the roundup, I'll go through everyone's websites. I'm not keeping track this month. I don't want to pay attention to Instagram this month. And that's fine.
Yeah.
And we all go through phases. And, the roundups will be there. If you're out of sewing this month, the roundups will be there in 3 months. It's fine. You can catch up.
And you've got 14 end of the month roundups on the website at the moment. I did a bit of a count before we came on.
Yeah. My first one was October of 2020. Yeah.
Have you seen more patterns being designed with the full range of sizes or a trend in patterns that are being re-released with the full range of sizes available?
I mean, there's a mix. A lot of the people who were previously going through what I call expansion on the database, most of them have completed their expansion. There's a few out there who are still going through their backlogs and expanding. There's also some who have decided they're no longer going through their backlogs, right? So they've done the ones they've considered popular enough to be worth expanding.
Right.
And then they're not going to go backwards anymore. They're only going to design new patterns that have their full range. There's merit to both, I think. Pattern designers only have a finite amount of time, just like the rest of us. And if they feel like going backwards, meaning going backwards and through their catalogs and expanding older patterns is less beneficial than new ones, okay. I'd prefer to see your whole catalog be within the entire size range that you offer. But At this point, I definitely see more that are just, this is my new pattern, here's the full size range. And from the get-go, the pattern is the full size range. I haven't seen as many pattern companies that are deciding to expand recently either. Either they've already started publishing their expanded patterns, or they made their intentions clear that they were going to and they're working on it, or they decided that's not the train they want to be on and they're out. In which case, okay, you're never going to be on the database and that's okay. And I don't have to use your pattern and that's okay. I mean, I do want to add that with a very limited exception, pretty much all of the designers on the database, not that they only make patterns for plus size curvy people, it's that they include plus size curvy people, right? So Sinclair Patterns, for example, goes from a size 00 to a size 30. And a 30, I believe in their sizing is a 62 or a 64-inch hip. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure. And, you know, there's a lot of pattern makers who, just because they're included on the database doesn't mean that they're not also making patterns that fit straight size sewists. It's also a good way for people who are looking to support companies who are making those size inclusive moves, but still want to make their own sizes, obviously.
Quite a few indie pattern designers, it's only one person and it's not their full-time job.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a lot to ask, yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot of work. I mean, all I do is make a list and it's still 15 hours of my time. It's a lot of work and I understand it in multiple ways. I do think that if you're publishing new patterns, your new patterns should always have your full size range. I am not on board with you publishing, say you have two size bands, the straight size band and the plus size band. I'm not on board with you publishing your straight size band and then publishing your plus size band a month or three later. But I do understand why some particularly smaller companies don't have time to go backwards. I would prefer if they did, but I do understand.
That's a good message for them to hear as well. Sarah, do you personally get involved in pattern testing for indie pattern designers?
I do. At this point, I've pattern tested for quite a few companies: Cashmerette, Closet Core, Straight Stitch Designs, Spokes and Stitches, By Hand London, Chuck and Notch. I also was on the promo team for Deer and Doe's Sirocco jumpsuit expansion, which is kind of not a test, but felt like a test to me. I was supposed to post about it, but they were also like, if you don't like it, that's okay. You still post about it. Which I turned out to love it, so it's okay. It felt much more like a test because of that. And I really enjoy testing, and I've already professed my love for spreadsheets. So being technical and criticizing people's instructions and looking for errors and that this notch is missing or out of place or things like that, those all are absolutely in line with how I live my life. I'm here for the small details. I've enjoyed that, but part of what I also really enjoy is it lets me know how a designer handles feedback. I'm almost always at the top of their size chart. I have a 59-inch hip, so this puts me very nearly in like the largest size or the largest few sizes of most pattern companies that I test for. There's a few exceptions, like, you know, By Hand London, I'm not the largest, but it's really nice to see how they respond to issues, the high end of their size bands, because a lot of what I run into for testing issues are actually related to grading issues, not so much pattern drafting. I don't think there's any pattern company that I've tested for that I wouldn't say that their drafting is relatively solid or very solid in some cases. There was a dress I tested for Closet Core, for example, the Celeste, which if you go scroll through my Instagram, you'll notice it isn't there. And it's not because I don't actually like what I made. It's because what I made in the round of testing that I was in had some pretty severe grading issues in the back. And it wasn't actually something that I experienced only on the plus size. They experienced it on the high end of both their size blocks. I'm just on the high end of the larger size block.
Right.
And it was really nice to see how they handled it. They got back to me about how to try and fix my dress because I'd already made it. And I'm just like, you know, I have this really nice dress that's really great everywhere except in the back where it gapes open, but it's fully lined. How do you think I should fix this? And they, you know, they got back to me with like, maybe try this. Obviously, it's not what we wanted, but maybe try this. generally I've seen very good handling of how they respond to me and feedback. I've heard a lot of horror stories from some companies and how they respond to when a plus size tester finds something wrong in the high end of their grading chart. And actually, I've never tested for any of those companies, and it wasn't necessarily because I didn't sign up for them. Sometimes you just want to be in the mess, right? Sometimes you just want to see that dumpster fire start. So I signed up for them just to try it, and they never selected me. I've been overall very impressed. And I find it very valuable to be able to tell other people, hey, this pattern was tested. Here's what it looked like. This came out okay. Like I said, obviously, I have a dress that didn't succeed, but I also know it took them an additional 4 or 5 months to release that pattern, and they redid the entire backside. So I didn't post about it because I haven't had time or the will to make a summer dress in winter to redo the dress and find out how I actually feel about it, because I really love the front side of this dress. And in all the pictures, it's pretty clear to me that they fixed the back. So I'm not going to say anything negative.
Yeah.
Because I think they listened, and I think that's valuable.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. They've listened and they've gone and done all the work to make sure that your feedback and everyone else's feedback has been used to make sure that the pattern actually works.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sarah, the reason I asked you to be on the podcast for Sober 50 is because we really appreciate all the work that you're doing, and we want people to be able to tag your work in the Sober 50 community. It's over 38,000 people on Instagram. So what hashtags should they be using, and what should we be doing to support you more?
The hashtags that kind of relate to the Curvy Pattern database is hashtag Sewingcpd. And that started because this past October, I actually ran a challenge and gave away some prizes, quite a few, over 40, if you just sewed a pattern that met the Curvy Pattern database requirement. I'm really trying to make that hashtag live forward, because even if I do the challenge again, it will be hashtag Sewingcpd 2022, 23, etc. It won't be the same without a year hashtag. And I think having a hashtag that you can go to and see patterns that automatically meet the database requirements, which means if you're like me and you have a 59-inch hip, in theory, if people are tagging correctly, every pattern that you're looking at and every make that other people have made is potentially something that could fit you, which is not something that we necessarily have in the community unless you go to a particular designer or a particular pattern. Hashtag Sewingcpd it's an umbrella. There's 120 pattern designers that this applies to, and I don't know how many patterns, but probably well over 10,000. And all these people making all their different things with whatever they like that you could potentially find something new with. And obviously, there are plus size members of the Sew Over 50 community, and it's also something they can use to, find those patterns and then find more community within the Sew Over 50 community. It's just a good way for people to find patterns and designers on Instagram with a quick hashtag click, rather than having to search through designer after designer.
One of the good things that people can do who follow the Sew Over 50 community hashtag, which is hashtag Sew Over 50, is if you're using one of the patterns on the database, also use hashtag Sewingcpd, so that people in our community can find those patterns quite easily. And also, Sarah, Sew Over 50 isn't just people who are 50 and over. It intersects with all communities.
We all work together, right? We're all trying to find the world we want to see.
Yeah, and keep people motivated to sew and support each other. And that's been one of the key pluses of being in the Sew Over 50 community, especially the last couple of years when we've had various lockdowns. It's been such a supportive community for a lot of people, and the work that you're doing supports people to continue to sew.
Absolutely. And Sew Over 50 has been really supportive of me in general. I can always count that Judith and Sandra are going to make sure that my challenge and my monthly roundups and any announcements I have are absolutely shared with the Sew Over 50 community. And I really appreciate that. And I can definitely tell when it happens, because all of a sudden I have more followers or some messages in the middle of the night that come in because they shared something. And they're always incredibly nice and write incredibly detailed, much more concise things on their stories than I do, because I'm just, here's a picture of my post. And I really appreciate that they've worked to spread the word of Sewingcpd and of the Curvy Pattern database.
They do a lot of work that really does support the work that you do. Thank you again to Judith and Sandy for everything that they're doing online for us.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Sarah, if people want to find the Curvy Pattern database, where can they find you online?
I'm on Instagram as Curvy Pattern Database. And then the website, and here's the trickster, the website is curvydatabase.com. There's no pattern in the website. I also have a Facebook page that's completely devoid of anything other than rerouting you to the website. So that's there if you get lost on Facebook. I believe you can actually Google me, and I'm the top search results all the time too now, which I had to fight for that. I had to use a lot of keywords. Yeah, Curvy Pattern Database on Instagram or curvydatabase.com.
That's great. Sarah, thank you for coming onto the podcast to help Sew Over 50 followers know all about the Curvy Pattern database, how to find you, and how to use the hashtag Sewingcpd on their posts.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And have a lovely day, listeners. Thank you for listening to both part 1 and 2 of Sarah talking about the Curvy Pattern database. This episode of Sew Over 50 podcast on Sew Organised Style was produced by me, Maria Theoharis, with permission of Sarah, soundbybensound.com. You can subscribe to Sew Organised Style podcast, spelled with an S, not a Z, on all good podcast apps. Make sure you go back and listen to our Sew Over 50 archive. Give us a 5-star rating and review, and we hope you'll support us through our Patreon account this year. There are over 280 podcasts free in our library, and the aim of each of these podcasts is to keep you company and encourage you to sew more often. Post any questions or podcast suggestions you have on our Instagram account at Sew Organised Style, or on our website at www.seworganisedstyle.com, or on our Facebook page. We look forward to joining you in your sewing room next time. Stay safe, everyone.